Our show today is all about Tesla stock and where Tesla's business might head, as Elon Musk has said they will start a new book. When Tesla had its IPO in June 2010, its stock was at $17 per share, but adjusting for stock splits, that price is now $1.13. The stock currently today is at $220, but was as high as $409 in November 2021. So when might Tesla get back to its all-time high? What do we think Elon means when he says Tesla's not just turning a page, but starting a new book? And what will happen as AI takes hold? We'll watch a video of Dan Ives at Wedbush Securities as he says for every dollar spent on Nvidia, we can expect $8 to $10 on the tech giants. So we have Sat joining us today. Sat is an early Tesla investor since 2012. He's been following the company incredibly closely. He's attended every single shareholder meeting since then. Welcome, Sat. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Herbert. Thank you. Yeah, all of it except 2022. But
yeah, I appreciate you. I loved having this conversation with you, and every once in a while I'll bring you in because you're one of the people that has been following Tesla since 2012 very closely. You know,
2006.
You have a 2000 what?
2006. I've been following Tesla since 2006, invested
so
until 2012.
Ever since the company was actually formed.
Yeah.
And again, you were very much heavily involved. So you've seen the ups, the downs, the changes, right? So let's get started with what have you seen? Is it now different? What is it now in this stage that we're at today? How is this different? Later, I'll play the video when Elon talks about not just turning a page, but changing a book. But before we get there, tell me what you are seeing differently this time.
So with Tesla in the beginning, it was just about surviving as a car company, and they had some cool features, and then they started doing the OTAs. So it's like, oh, that's cool tech, and better than updating a GPS, taking it to the dealer. So it wasn't that big of a difference than there's some sort of features of smartphone. But then you started adding more and more features, and FSD came in, and then that's become much bigger portion of the progress. You see the progress of that. So it wasn't just about, hey, here's a car company that's starting up. They became profitable, and then most companies just ride that. If they become profitable and sustain it every quarter, typically that's when the company just keeps doing that. They don't go and reinvent themselves over and over again. And today you see Tesla's always working on the Optimus, they're working on the FSD and the cars, and they're also working on Tesla Energy and then superchargers. And superchargers didn't seem like a big deal besides, hey, what do you charge? What do you do if you don't have a charging place between states and long distances? And they solved that problem. But I didn't think it would become the U.S. Standard for supercharging outside infrastructure, right? It's just like they're moving on a whole different level now because they're doing pretty much everything else besides the car. They're doing a great job on the cars. The refresh Model 3 is amazing, but they're making these progress in terms of the internals of the company and how they manufacture things. The factory is a new thing, and they don't get credit enough for it. So the trajectory that we have going forward from today seems even more refreshing and newer because, Tesla IPO'd around $17 pre-split. It's $1 something now in terms of today's stock price. So it's like, almost a 200x even at current stock prices. And I think, hey, most companies, when you get that kind of return, that's great. And it takes years and years before they go on and doing other stuff. And I think Tesla is doing it much quicker. I don't think it's as fast as people want it to be, at least the people who are following, because we follow it every day. But there's so much going on in Tesla that other companies don't even try. Other OEMs can't even get the software to be one in the car. So let alone be able to work that on in several different product lines.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, you're right. So obviously the world has changed where back then when you were following it, they're just trying to survive. They're trying to create a car company. But every strategy, it feels, or almost all the strategies that Tesla has been wanting to happen is happening. It's coming to fruition. And that's what you're saying, right? It's no longer trying to survive. They're actually trying to now build businesses that they've been laying the foundation on for so long. And these are all very big businesses, right?
Yeah, and the business that they're tapping into is a multi-billion-dollar business. It could be a startup within itself. So he's able to incorporate that into the current business models and current product line basically, and how to help it. It indirectly or directly helps the current business, and that's a very unique setup. Like to be able to have all these ideas and startups and products that actually help the current business. Having the optimists work on the factory is going to be much better than hiring humans. If you can replace it with the robots are much better at working, and you prevent injuries and so forth. And Tesla's been already heavily automated, way more than other OEMs from the very beginning. And to be able to do that manufacturing in home base in the U.S. and bringing manufacturing back, which Elon doesn't get enough credit for, and still be able to make unprecedented gross margin per unit. To get 6 to 7% was a miracle in the car industry, and he hit it out with 25% with the Model S when it first came into production and volume production. So you see that he's able to accomplish these things and make bold decisions that other companies can't. So when you're transitioning, there's going to be a lot of, you're going to ruffle some feathers, whether it's in the company or the direction or the industries that you're tapping into, because you're creating something new. And that's why I think Elon and Tesla can do it, because he's able to withstand it. You have to have a really strong leadership to do it. And I want other OEMs who make EVs succeed. It seems like sometimes I may be critical about them, but it's almost like they get slack, but then Tesla doesn't. And I see that from the very beginning. And it's like, hey, that's a difference in the environment today is it's almost like, well, Tesla gets all the criticism, and then the other OEMs ride on that back, almost like, oh, we want other OEMs there, but they're not making the right decisions. And it's not about the financials in terms of like, hey, we got this number up, down, or this and that. It's just basic decisions that if it's like Tesla's already showing how to do it, and then the other OEMs are like can't make a profit off of each unit, and it's like, well, if one's already done it, you just do what that one does. Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
But they can't copy it. Yeah,
and they can't do it, and because their business model, their suppliers, all these stuff that they have from before, somehow they're not making the right decisions to be able to do that. And I go into some of the details of it, but it's like it's been like 3-4 years that these other OEMs have been doing volume production, and they haven't gone to it. And it's just really interesting how Tesla is able to capitalize on that and then keep on moving forward with it. And it's like, oh wait, they made volume production, they became profitable every quarter, and now it's like, oh, FSD. And FSD got so good that even people who are really critical about it are now starting to like, hey, you know what? I can have my spouse be in the car and my kids in the car, and then now it's like, well, you can apply that to the Optimus now. So it's like the pace that Tesla's moving is so fast that people don't realize how fast it is, because they don't follow every day. But if you follow every day and then you see the progress that they're making, but the stock doesn't reflect it, right? It's always a huge lag in my eyes. It's like, I don't even know why they went down in the first place when they're profitable every year. I mean, every quarter and every year since they're included in SP 500. So it's really interesting that they're able to make stuff happen despite the economy and the interest rate being crazy high.
Right.
Just able to manage it. And that's why it's like, you see that difference in the change in navigating that economic downturns and upturns. And plus the auto industry is going up and down, and yet Elon and Tesla are capitalizing on making other businesses happen within the company. And I think that's the difference when going forward. I think in the next few years, it's going to be a huge difference. But people aren't going to realize, or they're going to capitalize on the financials only after it's happened. We're like, oh, we knew that 100 miles away. It's so obvious it's going to happen. But it's not in the way that we imagine it, and the execution isn't going to be the timeline that you want it to be. Like, I wish the trajectory was like left and then up right. Like, we all wish it was that way. It never is, because they're doing something that other people don't, and then they get criticized for it. And Elon gets say, hey, he's off his timeline. And it's like, well, if you're doing a startup and for the first time and nobody on the planet knows how to do it, I think there's a reason why there's a delay. It's not like they just keep on losing money. That's the difference. It's like they already have a model, even developing the FSD to make money. They're not losing money on it. And that's the fascinating part of the business model, that he's able to put together something that's not going to lose money and still make money off that business model and still be able to make that progress. And that setup is not talked enough, because it's not about just making a product and then selling for a profit. Like, it's making another product while he's doing that, making a profit, and then still making a profit on the current things he's developing. Like, how do you set that up? Typically, the rationale that people have is like you have something completed, and only when you have it completed, then you can put a certain price on it, and then you make profit on it. It's like that's not how he's rolling now. So he's doing a business model where it's based more on software, but the softwares keep on rolling, but he's still making money on it. And so that's why like, there's a sustainability to Tesla. So at least even if it takes a little bit longer, I know it's going to be able to be executed and done. But the other companies, it's almost like a race against time between how much capital you have left for it, or are you going to keep doing it, or it's keep losing money? Like it's a matter of time before you start deciding that difference. Yeah. So you see that shift happening, not just based on products and what they're doing, but the business models behind it that sustains it. Is it going to be sustainable? And I don't see that sustainable with the other companies. And the reason why is because they're not making decisions that's unpopular. It's going to be unpopular with the public and the customers. But in order to survive, sometimes you have to make really hard decisions. And Elon is willing to do that every time something happens, or even before. Now he does it even before. He has to, change out, lay off some people, or the trajectory with different, hire new people. And that's not popular. Nobody's not happy with that situation. But if you have to make that shift and then keep it lean and profitable, it's really important to do that every now and then. It's no different than cleaning house every now and then.
Yeah. Well, I want to show a video of Dan Ives talking about Nvidia. Nvidia's earnings is coming this week. And he says that for every dollar that people buy Nvidia chips, it's $8 to $10 for the multiplier to what these tech companies are using for those chips. And that's where people are not recognizing that. So let's listen to that, and we'll talk about Tesla as an AI company.
A lot riding on this report. You have a new note out. Let's just start with this. I'm just looking at the estimates. These are the estimates. Revenue growth of 112%, EPS growth of 125%. Just astronomical. It's like I had you shaking your head, and you're one of the biggest fans of this company. Can this company meet these expectations? Can it even exceed them? Is just meeting them good enough for investors?
Well, meeting is not good enough, but I believe this is going to be a drop the mic moment for the godfather of AI, Jensen Nvidia, because all of our checks are showing this is accelerating. And I think the street, like you said, every quarter, prove it. This revolution is just starting, but it all starts with Nvidia. In my opinion, it is the most important earnings, not just of the year, potentially in many years, because of what this represents in terms of tech.
So I've been asking a lot of people this. Is it the earnings that matter or the guidance? Because the expectations are lofty. Let's say they meet or beat when it comes to revenue and EPS, but the guidance isn't what people are expecting. What does that do to the stock? What do you think it does to the market?
It's all about the guidance. But we just got back from Asia. All of our checks are showing Street is still underestimating this acceleration. Because right now, the only game in town is Jensen. And really, if you look what NVIDIA is doing, especially from chips coming forward, this enterprise demand is just starting. And in my opinion, of course, Powell, Jackson Hole is so important.
Huge, obviously.
But the market, what it's going to do for the rest of the year, and I could argue even in 2025, it starts with this NVIDIA earnings. And I expect, get the popcorn ready. It's going to be a
You say this every quarter, Dan.
No, but this is going to be a showstopper showing where the revolution's going.
Okay.
And I think the skeptics continue to get proven wrong.
What about the questions, the air pocket between different iterations of their chips, some of their customers making their own chips, and the fact that the AI enthusiasm seems to be dying down? You're not concerned about any of that?
Yeah, so it's hit on them. For a delayed 2 to 3 months, I view that as sort of an asterisk. In other words, this is not moving the needle in terms of from a demand perspective. When you talk about AI in terms of some of the hype, look what we saw from the hyperscalers. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, what Nadella talked about, what Lisa Su and AMD, the Messi of AI, Palantir in terms of the use cases. It's showing that now the second, third, fourth derivatives are just starting to play out. So when I look at what the godfather of AI, Jensen and NVIDIA are doing, we're talking about transformation. I believe a year from now, this is a $4 trillion market cap along with Apple and Microsoft.
By the way, you changing his last name. It's Jensen Nvidia. It's not Jensen Huang anymore. You just decided?
Look, you're
making decisions. I want to get back to your note. According to your research, for every dollar spent on Nvidia chips, it kind of flows through to the rest of the tech sector to $8 to $10. What does that mean for some of these other stocks?
That's the most important thing. Because remember, it's not just about Nvidia. It's about the multiplier. It's about the revolution, the $1 trillion of CapEx. For every dollar spent on an Nvidia chip, there's an 8 to 10 multiplier across the rest of tech. That's why it's so important in terms of what Nvidia says for this bull market to continue.
So you're saying it's a broad tailwind. It's not just it's a rising tide that's going to lift all boats.
Because it's not just
even in software, because software seems to be under pressure, or at least it was when it comes to this AI craze, and it seems like a lot of the money that was going to software has gone to chips.
But even next week, you'll hear from Benioff and Salesforce. What are they focused on? AI.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you this question, Sat. So this is obviously AI boom happened. Tesla didn't really participate in that. Nvidia clearly is making huge revenue and earnings. They're selling their chips. But even then, there's been this slowdown in AI. People are questioning whether or not this is real. Is there an ROI? He's saying that this earnings call that happens this week is very, very important. It represents that the AI boom is happening. And then he goes, by next year, you'll start seeing lots of companies showing the ROI for this from this AI boom. You know, Tesla, where do you see Tesla participating in this AI boom, and what happens with Nvidia?
In reality, I think Tesla already is. It's just that we don't see it because it's behind the scenes. And it's really nuanced too, because if you don't use FSD, you won't know. So the amount that progress they're making, and they're already Elon made the 6 huge fans in front of the Gigafactory in Texas, and that's the data servers he's setting up. That he's said he's committed to buying 100,000 of their H100 chips of Nvidia. Forgot the name right. But it's a $40,000 chip. Like each chip is around $40,000, and he's going to buy 100,000 of them, and he's not the only company that's doing it. And so, to even utilize that kind of compute power and then require that kind of compute power, people don't realize like how crazy that is. And there's one quote that I was looking at, and Musk had claimed on an AI for the Dojo. That it's going to be 1 quintillion floating point operations per second. So you'd have to do that one calculation every second for like 31 billion years. You know, it's the amount of compute that it's doing. It's insane, and that's why the FSD is getting so much better, because you're using these training models. So you're not having to redo it in real life. If we had to do it in real life, we'll never get to it because it takes too many years. And so that progress and utilizing what Nvidia's chip is doing, and then the AI stuff, and then there's ChatGPT, there's Grok, there's all these other LLMs, and there's all these other basically AI related stuff, even just in terms of changing how we're going to do search and compiling information and applying information. It's going to be different. And so how that plays out, we don't know. Right now, every startup the history of startup that I've looked at, every revolution of technology, including the laundry machine to refrigerators to color TV, like you're going to have a bunch of companies that come up, and they're going to have investors invest in because the investors think maybe this company will be one of them that will succeed. But usually, majority of the companies, even when they're successful, a handful of them, or even 10 of them, they'll always delineate back down to 2 or 3. The best ones usually capitalize on the market, basically. So right now, we're in a period where you have a bunch of humanoid startups coming up. I'm pretty sure several of them will survive. And at some point, they'll probably become bigger entities themselves, or become part of a company that will buy them out. But either way, it will start becoming smaller and smaller. Right now, we're at the beginning stages of it. So it seems like there's a lot of them. And then people are like, oh, wait, there's too many. Maybe that's hype. People want to question it. But that's a natural part of innovation. You're always going to have a lot of companies. And right now, there's a lot of interest for it. And we don't know how it's going to play out. So it's going to play out in different ways. And part of it's like the ChatGPT. There's other ones like what Tesla's actually using it in terms of training for their cars and so forth. So it's just that progress is going to be different in how people look at it, because we don't exactly know. But the AI part is just starting. So to say that, hey, it's kind of getting saturated, or there's too much going on, and maybe AI is not, I don't think people can figure out what that's going to become like when Tesla's already applying it in a way that others aren't. And they already have Optimus Bot, a couple of them at least, being tried out and used in the factory for testing. So if you have, or even just that factor of manufacturing being changed with the robotics that's happening with the AI, it's not. And the thing is, like, the robotic stuff has been around for a very long time. It's not like it doesn't exist. Like the way I see it, it's kind of robotics that's pre-programmed, but it's not AI per se. To some degree, it's a kind of overlapping. Like you have the floating machines and robots that move stuff in the factory. That's been around for decades now, and so it's not like it doesn't exist. I see it in Japan. There's like robots that servers, and it works great, but it's a limited function in that specific environment that's programmed for that specific part. It's not an AI where it could compile information, new information, and apply it differently. So that transition is happening, and that's why I think it's, if someone's not really seeing it, it's just a matter of time. It will, but we don't see it in the front consumer side that fast because the development is very different, and this application is different because if you don't have just one pre-programmed thing or several tasks, but it's actually thinking on its own, then it can do much more. And we need certain things of that in terms of like certain labor shortages or preventing injuries and stuff like that. But even the products that you use is going to change. So when sci-fi movies became just like a dream, and this is something that, you know, the movie industry does, and then now it's becoming reality. For the first time, it's like, hey, that's actually going to happen. And so you see that happening in places also that you can utilize that technology if it does get there. So we're rescue missions. There's so many places to use for it, but that AI part is just starting. And Nvidia, I think, is done a great job. I don't think they're going to slow down. I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon.
So when is the street going to recognize Tesla as an AI company? So in your history of what happened to Tesla, right? In order for when the stocks skyrocketed, it was only when they actually introduced a new vehicle that was actually sold and actually saw that it was starting to skyrocket up in terms of production and deliveries. That's when the stock followed. Is that what we're going to need to see? FSD turns into robotaxi. Robotaxi is a real business. The bot is a real business. Or is there an opportunity where people recognize it's an AI company before, just like they're seeing all these other companies are AI companies and recognize it on their stock?
I think for the AI side, it's going to take a little bit in that sense because the volume production of the vehicles, even though when they hit the volume production and they're hitting the numbers, 10,000 vehicles a week, and then they have great gross margin on them, it still took them, the market, like 18 months to 2 years to even recognize it. It's like, I was like, why is the stock so depressed? Like a Model 3, it's like, yeah, there was that point where in the beginning it was, Elon had said later on that, they're weeks away from going bankrupt. But then it's like, once they hit volume production, they hit the numbers, at least a year out, it's like the market still didn't recognize it. It was really interesting to me. It's like, hey, they're reaching their numbers now, and the market doesn't recognize it until like 18 months, 2 years later. And so I think that's going to happen the same thing with AI side, even if it's like we see it as even consumers, or we say, hey, they're doing a great job on it, they're making profit on it. I still think it's going to take a year or two before they even recognize it. And that's the lag part of it, because you don't see it in the financials where you're going to blow away expectations. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen even the quarter that they hit volume production or profitability on that specific product line. It doesn't happen that way, especially with Tesla when they have so much criticism. And it's really interesting to me. And it's like, it's not, I would say it's not as bad as the beginning, but then they still get criticized for it. When they have a track record that proves that they was actually, they still get criticized for it. And then the companies that don't have the track record don't get criticized as much. And it's like, well, if there's certain criticism that are valid about Tesla, but I was like, well, I don't see you applying that to everyone else. And so there's that part of like, well, you're doubting him about the AI stuff and the bots, but then he's been able to execute on all the other stuff. There's always that time, like we don't know exactly when the time is, and then people can say, oh, there's a delay, but besides that, he's actually been able to execute on it. And I've seen so many companies, even this year, there's already like 2 or 3 EV related companies that went bankrupt. And so I don't want to see more of that. But then it's like when Elon's doing it, it's like, hey, look, the AI stuff is real. He's incorporating into the company now. And now the other competition has to do it. So it's just, but I don't see them making that progress that Tesla is. Like he has that gigantic server setup, the 6 fans in front of factory. I can only fathom how crazy big that server is going to be and what kind of compute power that's going to have. And to be able to build that out that fast, and within a couple of weeks you see the progress that's already been made. It's insane that you should go back to what Nvidia is doing, and it's like Tesla has to make their own chips too. They kind of already do, but there's not enough, like even battery manufacturers. They don't have not enough even just in-house. Like it's just not enough. They need Nvidia to do great, and everybody else in the chip industry. They need to do great for all of us, basically. So when Dan Ives is saying about, it's $1 in Nvidia is $8 to $10 in the industry, it makes sense, because how you utilize that somewhere else is going to be more profitable and helpful, and it's going to be necessary. So Tesla's just starting to tap into it and commit to that part of it, but they're bringing those chips and making their own servers in house, right? It's just and then they're also making their own chip, and they have Dojo training on their own, making their own software. So I think that aspect is like kind of like it's like super high risky business, because you don't know if it's successful. Elon's not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's going to work out some way. I don't think it's going to be like where that AI part is not going to be in the future. And so when you see that trajectory that's going on, and the stock of Tesla will go up at some point, but it's not going to be at the time you want it, and it's not going to be when we think it is. We think it's going to be certain events. I always think it's off somewhere, because the market does not recognize it the way we recognize it. And in terms of financials, now it doesn't make any sense. Like for 2-3 years, it doesn't make any sense to me why it doesn't go up when they're the most profitable in terms of per unit in the vehicles, and they've stayed profitable as a company. And so they've navigated, I think, the macro part of the economy really well. So it's always going to be a lag in that stock price. And it's like when people enter it and they go down, I was like that for 6 years, right? From 2013, you saw it like to 2019. It's like, oh, when is it going to go anywhere? They'll make more cars and everything than 2013. Like,
this is where I kind of disagree a bit, because I'm going to say that, obviously I've been with you. I've been watching the stock since 2012, and you've seen it flat, and you see it jump, then you see it flat, and it's always based on actual revenue, actual cars produced, right? And then you were saying that when AI comes, it's gonna be a while until they start making money, and then the stock only follows afterwards. The reason why I disagree on this time around is that AI boom is real. AI actually improves productivity. And when you see the giant supercompute that Tesla is putting together, it accelerates everything in an exponential curve. And so I think that you will see the way the stock moves is when they're surprised by some new capability that wasn't able to be done before. And I think we'll all be surprised once you have that big of compute, and then you keep creating bigger compute, the chance for them to actually show you huge surprises is exponential. You know what I'm saying? So maybe all of a sudden, robotaxi is much faster than you realize. Because you know how it is? It's slow. And then people think, oh, it's going to be another 10 years. But actually, it can be, with that compute now added, it could be very quickly. And the same thing with the bots. Like all of a sudden, the bots will be talking to you. You'll be talking back to it. You'll be able to do all sorts of different tasks sooner than you realize. So, I mean, that's an optimistic perspective. But I'm going to play a video of Elon at the shareholder meeting talking about writing a new book. And I wanted to hear what you think he meant by this, and where Tesla's headed now that we're starting a new book.
I just want to start off by saying, hot damn, I love you guys. Yeah. We have the most awesome shareholder base. I mean, it's just incredible. Any public company, it's incredible. Wow. We've got a great sort of shareholder meeting here to recap the achievements of the company and tell you about where we're going. And I think it's incredible. I think we're not just opening a new chapter for Tesla, we're starting a new book.
They cut this off when the eruption of applause for that. It sure looked like that this was scripted. He had already pre-planned to say this. How did you interpret what he's saying?
Yeah, I think the seismic change that's going to happen in Tesla, if arguably it was already been happening, but it's really going to be setting the stage for it. It's not just a new product of the same thing. It's not like another van or another like truck. It's not another new product of the same stuff they've been doing. And so the new book is going to be the AI related stuff from the bots and Dojo and whatever else is going to come after that too. I'm sure there's plenty of other stuff that's coming up. My hunch also the other part is like an app store. So there's so much more that's happening that's going to be not just car related. It's going to go beyond the car related stuff. And you see that change with the manufacturing of building that server too. So it's before they didn't have that. They're still doing Dojo without that. So now it's like huge difference that they're making in that completely new book. I see it as they're changing as fundamental as a company, from a car company to an AI company that's tech related. It's a very different setup. I never possibly imagined after more than a decade that the progress that Tesla has made that they're going to turn into an AI company. It's a completely different new. Like actually, I could never imagine that. Like you're like 8 years ago. Did you imagine that it's going to be a completely different company?
That's the thing I was going to say was that isn't it great? Isn't it funny a little bit? It's ironic that the biggest argument, right? The negative thing that they're saying about Tesla is, he's been promising full self-driving. He's been promising robotaxi since 2016. But then if you step back and realize, well, that means that they've been working on not neural nets, but autopilot, AI since 2016. And then they were one of the first to discover that neural nets is actually the answer or heading more closely to the answer. So they've been working on this for a long time. They've been building Dojo for several years. They had a couple snafus. Well, of course. I mean, what company builds a semiconductor chip, right? So
exactly, and that's the thing. It's like, and when you look at other companies, because I was invested in Netflix 15 years ago, and I entered a time when they tried to split the company into the DVD stuff and then the streaming side, and then people got completely mad, and the stock went down like crazy, and that's when I went in because I knew that what Reed Hastings was doing was like different. Is that he was talking about streaming, and we didn't have the internet set up for streaming, live streaming. Like we take it for granted what we do today. Even though we're doing this interview, it wasn't possible back then. The bandwidth wasn't enough. We didn't have enough speed and the stability of the internet, the speed. We didn't have that, and yet he was already thinking like a decade ahead, and that this is going to be the norm. And the company got pounded that time. Like he's like, oh, get rid of your main profit generator with DVD rentals being sent out. It's like they completely separated. It's like completely get rid of it. It's like, what are you thinking? It's like, well, he sees a future that other people don't see, and we take it for granted as if like, oh, it was just meant to be and so easy. It wasn't. Every company that has done something like crazy innovation, they always had to do something that people are like, that doesn't make any sense. But then they're looking at something 10 years out, 5 years out. And I mean, I think you're right. But in terms of like the AI, it's going to be faster than that. And it's easier to see the progress because it's so applicable. But I think that new chapter is not even a chapter anymore. It's a book because it's completely changing Tesla's trajectory. So when I thought, maybe doubling, tripling is possible. And now it's like, the 10X is feasible. It's going to be
very feasible.
But it's even conservative in some aspect if you look at it where it's going to go. So I'm seeing more of the robotic stuff being actually used in Japan in certain places. That's very rudimentary, like even like a security mall thing with cameras. It just goes around the mall, like and it starts popping up these things with sensors, but it's not like high level thing, and it's like you just call the button, call the actual person somewhere in the office if you actually need a human to contact them, but it's not replacing humans per se to that level. And so you see that trajectory, like, oh, this is a new chapter, like completely new chapter that we don't think about. And so we don't know when, and we want it now, but it's going to take some time. But I think that chapter is of a new book. It's complete. It's like the series of, like, I see like Harry Potter series. Like you see the book, it's like
new books,
completely another book. And I think it's more than one book that's going to come. That's the scary part.
That is great. Thank you so much, Thad. I love catching up with you every once in a while to get your evaluation of where we've been, where we're at, and what's going to happen next. This is fun. So we'll see. Tesla is turning into an AI company. It's slow, but all of a sudden, it'll be here sooner than you realize. That's what we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Thank you very much, Sat. Follow him on X at SA_futurist. And we've done several shows here with him as well. So thank you, Sat. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.